There is a war going on. It's a spiritual war, a war between truth and deception. Only one thing cuts through all the lies and the opinions of man. It is the truth of an ancient book that we call the Bible. It is God's Word. It is God's sword. Isaiah chapter 30. I don't know who or how many of you in this room what I'm about to say will be relevant to. I don't know, looking around, maybe a few, but maybe more. We do, it's been a long time since I've taught the Master Mission Mate message. Some of you may be familiar with it because it got put into a form of a book, paperback, and still available as a download. But it's been a while. It's been a little while. I think it's time to address it again. I've noticed, typically here at Calvary Chapel, when we do have our traditions, traditionally, we don't have a bunch of teens playing with the power tools of romance. Typically, because they've been taught. That's not a rule. We don't make rules, and we don't prohibit anything. But it is definitely apparent to me at this season, we've got a bunch of teens that need the course. So I'm offering it this Sunday night. The Sunday night we'll review it. It'll be good for all you single men in CRD and the chronically single as well. And those of you who are single again, you might do well to come Sunday night and take some notes. But the priority for the believer should be number one: who is my master, the Lord of my life? And knowing that and settling that should be top priority. And then what has he called me to? What is my mission? What is my purpose in life? Making that a priority to sort that out. And then when you have done that, you have an idea of who you are, who your Lord is, and where you're going in life, then maybe you talk to the Lord of your life about who is this mate? Who does he wish you to partner up with? You might want to have something to offer before you go offering. And that's the problem with so much of what is done in secular practice. This is not the world, this is the kingdom of God. We do things different. And I just want to say to you, there's only two kinds of people addressed by the Holy Scriptures: single people and married people. Do you know what's not found in the Scripture? Anything in between. There's no tweenies in the Bible. There's no in-betweens. There's no, like we're in a relationship. What is that? You and the mailman are in a relationship. People eat your mail. You're thankful, right? I mean, how do you define? Well, we're going. You're going where? Well, we're going together. Where? Nowhere. It's really worldly, it's really juvenile to play with power tools and get involved. And for some teens, it's a drug. It is the rush of emotion. It's not something to play with. The process of discovery of the will of God does not involve you test driving somebody else's heart. And if you're a teen, you ought to be focused. So we're going to talk about that. If you're spiritually a teen, you should be focused on who is your Lord? Who is he? Who is the master of your life? What is the mission he has called you to? And then after those things are settled, and in the process of growing in him, in the process of finding that mission and getting yourself there, then you allow the Lord to bring somebody to you. But there are some, I really want to encourage you, some of you teens need to go to sleep, like God put Adam into a deep sleep. You need to pray the Lord help you go to a deep sleep. And so you just quit being pathetic. Is that patronizing? Oh, there's more Sunday night. So it's ironic because Ben is now 16, and the last time I remember teaching it, Jess was as well. Last time I remember, in fact, this one I got put into book form, was Jess and Monique and Chantel. All of those girls were all teens. Rosaire. Dom was actually younger than them, our youth pastor. So it's been a while. It's been too long. So Sunday night, it's coming up again. If that's relevant to you, if you've got teens, you're a parent, you got teens, I encourage you to be there yourself to take notes. And if you're a teen, you might want to be there and pay attention. You might want to be there with an open heart, an open mind, and a readiness to apply. Isaiah chapter 30, tonight, our text before us. We continue our journey through Isaiah. Verse 1. We'll read a section. Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, that walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. And therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. For his princes were at Zoan, and his ambassadors came to Hanes. And they were all ashamed of a people that could not profit them, nor be a help, nor profit, but a shame, and also a reproach. The burden of the beasts of the south into the land of trouble and anguish, from whence come the young and the old lion, the viper and the fiery flying serpent. They will carry their riches upon the shoulders of young asses, and their treasures upon bunches of camels to a people that cannot profit them. For the Egyptians shall help in vain, and to no purpose. Therefore have I cried concerning this, their strength is to sit still. Well, let's deal with this section. I'm just asking, do I seem loud to you tonight? I seem loud to me, so I'm asking. So here we are in the point in Israel's history where the northern kingdom is already just about to fall to the Assyrians, to be conquered, captured, taken away, dealt with in judgment for their idolatry. Southern kingdom, Judah, they know, even in the days of Hezekiah, that they are in the proverbial crosshairs of the Assyrians. They know they're coming. This empire is growing and growing more aggressive, and it's conquering all these little nations on its way to them. They know. And instead of looking to the Lord, they start hustling. They start scheming. And in their scheme, they think to use their wealth to hire the Egyptians, to hire Pharaoh and his army. This is outrageous. God is so offended, as he ought to be. He set them free from the Egyptians. The Egyptians were the tyrants that God delivered them from. And now they're going to offend God by looking to Egypt. So God's statement, woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord. They take counsel, but not of me. They don't look to the Lord. They cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. Do you understand that it is for us, likewise, to be just as they were, and to refuse to look to the Lord, but instead to try to hustle our way out of trouble, to try to scheme, to look to man, to try to think that we can buy our healing, our freedom from our vices and all of that. It is adding sin to sin. It's offensive. It's one thing to not only not ask God, but it's even worse to go and ask for salvation from another tyrant. To me, I'll be honest with you, it is as wicked as the modern practice of the drug addict that instead of looking to the Lord, he looks to another doctor with another pill. Just give me some Suboxone. Give me some substitute drug, and I'll just stay permanently dependent upon that, but functional. It is adding sin to sin. It's not only not turning to the Lord, but just trading drugs. I want to go for something that's I don't know, a little more clinical. It's a little more, it doesn't, you know what, I don't care if it's clinical. And you know what else? I don't care if it's been made legal. It didn't get made right. So the guy goes, well, I'm just going to cut back on all this heroin, just smoke my weed. You're adding sin to sin. You act like that was, some kind of divine plant. Listen, about that so-called divine plant, it has been messed with. It has been tampered with. It's got a lot of amazing properties, but they have been cloning, genetically engineering. The level of THC now is, I've got a book in my office, Alex Berenson just compiled all of the current facts, all of the current studies with regard to the psychosis that is being created by THC. The psychosis, the stereotypical laid-back mellow pot smoker is a thing of the past. That's from the 70s. That's a form of marijuana that doesn't even exist anymore. It has been genetically engineered to produce a greater high, and it is producing violence and psychosis and permanent damage. While public opinion is going one way 100 miles an hour, all of the science, all of the research is going the exact opposite direction at the same speed. But nobody wants to talk about it. And everywhere you turn in our world now is another green cross. The green cross is an offense to God. The Red Cross, once predominantly Christian people, were making a statement. The green cross is a statement that God has not missed. So adding sin to sin, they're going to take their journey down to Egypt, verse 2, and they have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh. You see that exclamation point in the King James Version? And to trust in the shadow of Egypt. That's God outraged. And therefore the strength of Pharaoh be your shame and trust in the shadow of Egypt, your confusion. You think you'll find shelter under the power of Egypt? And so the description of the meeting of the princes and the ambassadors from Judah is all described here in verse 6. All of their beasts of burden loaded down with treasures, whereby they seek to buy deliverance from the Assyrians. But verse 7 says, for the Egyptians shall help in vain and to no purpose. Therefore have I cried concerning this. Their strength is to sit still. Instead of taking your journey, instead of loading your animals with all of this wealth that you have remaining, instead of sending your princes, instead, sit still. See the salvation of God. That is where their strength would be, to wait on the Lord. Look at verse 8. Now go, write it before them in a table, that's on a tablet, and note it in a book, that it may be for a time to come, forever and ever. In other words, this is God telling Isaiah, write it down before they go try this thing, so that when this prophecy is fulfilled. Everybody know, I told you, Egypt is no help. Verse 9, that this is a rebellious people, lying children that will not hear the law of the Lord, which say to the seer, see not, and to the prophet, prophesy not unto us. Right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits. The false prophets have always been popular. The false prophets always had mega followings, and they still do. People want to hear about your best life now. People want to hear a smiley guy tell them smooth things. That's a rebellious people. Verse 11, get you out of the way. Turn aside out of the path. Cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. And that's the message of the people to the true prophet, to the true seer. See not, to the true prophet. Prophesy not unto us right things. Speak smooth things. Prophesy to cease. Get out of our way. Cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. Wherefore thus saith the Holy One of Israel. Because you despise this word and trust in oppression and perverseness and stay thereon, therefore this iniquity shall be to you as a breach ready to fall. a swelling out in a high wall, whose breaking cometh suddenly at an instant. You and I can't relate to this because we've never been inside of stone walls that are being sieged by an enemy outside. But the enemy outside the walls, continually attacking the walls with their machinery and their big rams, will ultimately cause a bulge to take place in the stone. And it'll continue to bulge as the stones are being knocked out of alignment, but then sudden collapse. That's what God is speaking of here. It'll come suddenly in an instant. He shall break in, verse 14, he shall break it as the breaking of the potter's vessel that is broken in pieces. He shall not spare, so that there shall not be found in the bursting of it a shard to take fire from the earth, from the hearth, or to take water withal out of the spit. That's when the earthen vessels, when the pottery is so utterly smashed, you can't even find a piece big enough to use it as a spoon for ash or live coals. For thus saith the Lord God, verse 15, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest shall you be saved. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength, and you would not. I got to tell you, I've had the Lord address my heart from this passage at times of trouble in my life. And I've heard him say everything right up until that colon. In returning and rest shall you be saved. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. I've heard the Lord say it to me. And I would choose to not note or live the final section, and you would not. In returning and rest. So like a prodigal, God would say, in returning. That may involve repenting, but in returning, and instead of this journey down to Egypt, return to a right relationship with God, to right standing, to right trust. Return, and then rest. Stop hustling. Stop your works. Stop all of that and just rest. God said, in returning and rest you shall be saved. And quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Quietness and confidence. You don't have to scream for help, and you don't have to argue to defend yourself. You don't have to fend. If you just leave things with the Lord as much as possible. Confidence, quietness, and confidence. Confident, that is, in the Lord. But they wouldn't do that in verse 16, but you said no. For we'll flee upon horses, therefore shall ye flee. And we'll ride upon the swift, therefore shall they that pursue you be swift. 1,000 shall flee the rebuke of one. At the rebuke of 5 shall ye flee. To be left as a beacon upon the top of a mountain, and as an ensign on a hill. Think about this for a second. That God had made the promise both in Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy chapter 28, about if you'll honor this covenant, I'll be with you, you'll be the head, not the tail, you'll lend to many nations, you'll be a debtor to none. If one of you would put 1,000 to flight, 2 will put 10,000 to flight. But in Leviticus 26, and also in the second half of Deuteronomy 28, God reverses it and says, if you violate this covenant, it's going to be the other way around. Instead of 1 putting 1,000 to flight and 2, 10,000, instead it's the other way around. 1 of your enemies will put 1,000 of you to flight. And this is what God warns here. Verse 18, therefore will the Lord wait that he may be gracious unto you. And therefore will he be exalted. He may have mercy upon you. For the Lord is a God of judgment. Blessed are all they that wait for him. How about that for a second? Justice, judgment, and mercy are spoken of in this verse, in this 18th verse. Therefore will the Lord wait. How gracious of God to wait, that he may be gracious unto you. And therefore will he be exalted, that he may have mercy upon you. So grace and mercy and justice all appear in the 18th verse. He is exalted when he has mercy. It's his character that is again made plain, manifested when God is merciful. God is exalted in being merciful, even as God is exalted in bringing down judgment, bringing down the hammer. That he may have mercy upon you, for the Lord is the God of judgment. You know what? Nobody even really appreciates mercy as mercy unless you first understand justice and judgment, that it's only when you know you deserve the fine that you really appreciate the break and the warning. Isn't it so? Only when you really know and appreciate how bad you are. I had it's part of Jess's testimony, Jess and Monique's testimony. Being teens with a license, remember the occasion where they stayed home for a weekend that Jeanette and I were gone, and man, made some bad choices. Just out of curiosity, they just went somewhere they shouldn't have gone. And sure enough, somebody saw them. They were at a local club on chem-free night. It was a trend back in those days, which was very hypocritical. And they knew how much I hated Jeanette. Jess knew how much I hated that whole scene. The hypocrisy of a business that's in the business of selling chemicals, having chem-free dance night at the downtown club. But they're just really curious more than anything else. They weren't attracted to that lifestyle. They were just really curious about what kind of loser teens are going to go do this. But they went, were seen, were confronted. Poor girls. Poor girls. That was back when we had our high school happening here. And they were called out and confronted in the hallway and told, "You've got just today to tell your parents, or I will." Can you imagine the agony, the suffering? The two of them have testified that they went back in their class and cried the rest of the day. They just kept looking across at each other and just start crying again. Oh, the dread. I don't know what Jess figured the sentence was going to be when her dad finally knew. I don't know what she thought it was. I don't know what she figured. I'm going to take her license for the next season of life. I don't know what she thought. I don't know. But she knew it was going to be bad. It was going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. It's just terrible to have to tell me. She finally called her mother and I in the kitchen. She's all crying. I thought, wow, this is going to be terrible. It's going to be something awful. She finally spits out her confession. I don't know what she expected, but what she got from me was surprise. What? You? Oh, then she starts crying harder. Because I had an expectation. I was just really shocked. I was surprised that she gave into that curiosity and went, there. And I said, well, let me go pray about this for a minute. It really was only a minute. I went in the other room and prayed. I felt so bad for her. She had suffered, I'm sure Monique too, they suffered so much in one awful afternoon. They suffered a year's worth of punishment in that one afternoon. Came back in and said, hey, listen, Jess, I know you've suffered a lot today. Just forget about this whole thing. I know you'll never do that again. And then she cries harder than she was before because she knew, she figured she deserved some kind of discipline, some kind of punishment. She figured something had to be coming down, and it didn't. Instead, she wrote in a paper that she had to write her application to go into Bible college, her testimony, and that whole story was in her testimony where she kind of got grace, understood grace for the first time, and mercy in light of the justice of God, which was cool. I'm very thankful for that. In Romans chapter 3, the Apostle Paul makes these statements about justice and his grace. And this statement that he makes, man, in Romans 3:26, to declare, I say at this time, his righteousness, that he, might be just and the justifier of him which believeth in Jesus. I love that verse. Romans 3:26. That God is both just and the justifier of him who believes in Jesus. See, anybody else, if like say you're the victim of a crime and you go to court and you're expecting the criminal that burned you to be punished and his day of judgment has come and you've come to witness sentencing and the judge lets him off the hook. You wouldn't see that as mercy. You'd see it as an injustice. But it's like this, you guys. God doesn't just say, okay, you, criminal, you're off the hook. No, God says, you deserve to be whipped. And then God comes down from the judgment seat to take the whipping on himself. That's the deal with the gospel. The justice of God is satisfied. Punishment was meted out. God is able to be both just and justifier. He can be both. He can justify the wicked without being unjust, without being crooked, without being unfair. So back here in Isaiah 30, the 18th verse again speaks of all of that, mercy. God being gracious, he'll be exalted that he may have mercy upon you, for the Lord is a God of judgment. Do you understand that he is not only a God of mercy, he's a God of judgment. He is both just and justifier. He does not cease to be just. Verse 19 says, for the people shall dwell in Zion at Jerusalem. Thou shalt weep no more. He will be very gracious unto thee at the voice of thy cry. When he shall hear it, he will answer thee. Do you hear the heart of God speaking through Isaiah here, that when we will just admit we're wrong and we'll just call out to him, when we will cry, when we'll be humble and just repent, God is so very comforting. He'll answer. Verse 20, though the Lord give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner any more. For thine eyes shall see thy teachers, and thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, this is the way, walk ye in it, when ye turn to the right hand and when ye turn to the left. This is God saying, when you have actually experienced the affliction, I don't know, you guys, how many of us have not eaten the bread of adversity and drank the water of affliction? We brought trouble upon ourselves, and trouble has a way of humbling us bad, hard. And when we will let that actually have its way, then we become receptive to being taught. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's when we have actually experienced the affliction and the adversity, the bread, we've eaten the bread of adversity, drank the waters of affliction, then all of a sudden we become receptive to our teachers and our ears. Actually, then suddenly we're like, all right, Lord, what do you want me to do? Because I've got enough of doing this my way. I've had enough of that. I've enjoyed as much of that as I can stand. And now, you just tell me where to go, and I'll do it. Tell me where to walk, and we become submissive and cooperative with his leading. And so God makes a promise to Israel, to Judah, that could happen, and that kind of change could come about. In verse 22, you shall defile also the coverings of thy graven images of silver and the ornament of thy molten images of gold. Thou shalt cast them away as a menstruous cloth. Thou shalt say unto it, get thee hence. Can any of you relate to this, that you finally came to a place where you were fed up with your idol? That might have been your cocaine. You talking about, David? And you throw it away like a menstruous cloth. That's pretty graphic, isn't it? Nobody hangs onto a menstruous cloth. You don't hang on to bloody rags. You dispose of it. This is what the Apostle Paul said in Philippians chapter 3 when he said, anything that was gained to me, I count it loss. In fact, I count it the dung, refuse, that everyone win Christ. I do count it all but dung, manure, refuse. Everything is trash compared to knowing you. Do you guys remember that Jonah 3:3 song? Everything is trash compared to knowing you. Then, it's then that we come to the place of throwing away these vices. Verse 23, and then shall he give the rain of thy seed, and thou shalt sow the ground with all, and bread of the increase of the earth, and it shall be fat and plenteous. In that day shall thy cattle feed in large pastures. The ox likewise and the young asses that ear the ground shall eat clean provender, which hath been winnowed with the shovel and with the fan. Man, and there shall be upon every high mountain and upon every high hill rivers and streams of waters in the day of the great slaughter when the towers fall. Man. Ultimate fulfillment of what we just read will be the millennium, the kingdom age. The ultimate fulfillment of the earth coming under the lordship of Christ who created it. And a time of flourishing for humanity. The time that Isaiah will also prophesy of, where men will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks and learn war no more. That sweet time when there's harmony. We live at peace even with the earth that we've had an adverse relationship with ever since Genesis chapter 3. But in Israel's, in Judah's history, the reign of thy seed. Do you understand that their relationship with God, the God of creation, the relationship that Israel has with Yahweh, this covenant relationship, is one where God says, you be my people, and I, the God of creation, will be your God. And I will bless. They were an aggregate people, and the one thing they needed for that land, which flows with milk and honey, the one thing that they needed for that land to produce food was rain. And if the rain came, they were so perfectly situated, just the right amount of sun and the quality of soil, volcanic soil, very rich, and man, it was so beautiful a situation, but it was absolutely dependent upon water. Israel was not like Egypt. The Egyptians could merely use the Nile. They could just dig canals. They could irrigate it. In fact, they did. The relationship that God had with Israel was different. With the people of Israel, the Jews, he called them to this land that flows with milk and honey, and he brought them to a place where there was no such means, that even the Jordan River is in the lowest spot of the land. Galilee itself is 600 feet below sea level, and the water from Galilee goes further down until it's only the Dead Sea, 1,250 feet. I think that's right, below sea level, questioning my second number. You don't irrigate with that kind. You can't use gravity. It's impossible. The water's down there. The water that they were dependent upon had to come from heaven. And it was sent by God, and God promises. This is a renewal of the covenant. And he'll give that rain of thy seed. The description is beautiful, that even the animals benefit. Verse 25, there shall be upon every high mountain, upon every high hill, rivers and streams of water in the day of the great slaughter when the towers fall. Let me just tell you, the ultimate fulfillment of this is on the other side of the tribulation, the other side of the judgment of God, and Babylon. Mystery Babylon the Great has fallen. There's a whole world government whose towers will fall. Verse 26 says, moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun. Wow. And the light of the sun shall be sevenfold as the light of 7 days. And the day that the Lord bindeth up the breach of his people and healeth the stroke of their wound. Somewhat figurative language for the days of a restored relationship with the covenant people and God. But I think it will be literal in the kingdom age, in the millennium, under the reign of Christ. Verse 27, behold, the name of the Lord cometh from far, burning with his anger, and the burden thereof is heavy, and the lips are full of indignation. His lips are full of indignation, and his tongue is devouring fire, and his breath as an overflowing stream shall reach to the midst of the neck, to sift the nations with a sieve of vanity. There shall be a bridle in the jaws of the people, causing them to err. That's heavy. Is that not heavy, the language of it? Judgment is coming. In verse 29, you shall have a song as in the night. When a holy solemnity is kept, and gladness of heart, is when one goeth with a pipe to come to the mountain of the Lord, to the mighty one of Israel. Songs of celebration, judgment, and songs of celebration at the exact same time. The New Testament speaks of such things. The Apostle John wrote in his first epistle something that suggests the very same thing. And we celebrate salvation. In fact, I'm not going to go there now. It's going to take too much time. We celebrate salvation. We have every reason to celebrate salvation. As a matter of fact, we've been through the book of Revelation, the whole thing, and we witnessed the testimony of John. What he saw in heaven is that on one side is celebration and praise to God for judgment that is being meted out on the earth. And on the earth, great mourning, agony, gnashing of teeth, even in a darkness so great that men are biting their own tongues and gnashing at their own teeth. Both of those things happening at the same time, and God speaks through the prophet that in all of this judgment, they will have a song. And there comes a time when God will, in fact, act in judgment on Israel's behalf against Antichrist and his armies, the armies of a world government. Verse 30 says, and the Lord shall cause his glorious voice to be heard, and shall show the lighting down of his army with indignation of his anger, and with the flame of a devouring fire, with scattering and tempest and hailstones. So this looks beyond what was going to happen. Verse 31 says, for through the voice of the Lord, shall the Assyrian be beaten down, which smote with a rod. 2 Kings chapter 19 records for us the intervention of God. One angel from the Lord, one angel, the angel of God, slays 185,000 Assyrians outside Jerusalem overnight. Judgment came. But back up here to verse 30. Again, the Lord shall cause his glorious voice to be heard, shall show the lighting down of his arm, with the indignation of his anger, with the flame of a devouring fire, with scattering and tempest and hailstones. That's not what happened in the more immediate fulfillment of what verse 31 is talking about, the Assyrian army being slain. There's some interesting Assyrian records because those kings wanted everything a matter of record. There are some interesting archaeological finds where the Assyrian kings will boast of everything, and then there's these certain gaps where they're conquering, and then suddenly no mention of the conquering. They don't record the utter defeats, and they certainly don't record the loss of 185,000. It's not a record. It's not recorded. But the sudden interruption of all the conquering is in the secular archaeology, in their records. So verse 30, I submit to you, goes back to the prophecy we're looking at. Again, Isaiah's got this scope that goes way out and then way near. He sees immediate fulfillment, and he sees future, way future fulfillment. And when you read of the description in verse 30, you get a strong suspicion that it is for a future time, a future act of judgment, where God declares war on the armies of Antichrist. Verse 32, and in every place where the grounded staff shall pass, which the Lord shall lay upon him, it shall be with tabrets and harps, and in battles of shaking will he fight with it. For Tophet is ordained of old, yea, for the king it is prepared. Here, God is talking about the Assyrian king. He hath made it deep and large. The pile thereof is fire and much wood. The breath of the Lord is like a stream of brimstone. Like a stream of brimstone doth kindle it. Tophet, what is that? Tophet is a very specific spot in the valley of Hinnom. If you can imagine looking at a map, and just imagine it's in front of me, the map of the old city of Jerusalem. The irony of looking down at that map is it's oriented with the north being up on your map and the south being down. There is a convergence of three valleys. Three valleys come together in such a way that they actually make a Hebrew letter. In the aerial view, looking at the map, actually make a Hebrew letter, which happens to represent the name of God, of Yahweh. Oh, the irony of this. The three valleys, you know the one, because I talk about it a lot, the Kidron Valley. It is right between the Mount of Olives and Mount Zion, the Kidron. But the other significant valley is the valley of Hinnom. And there's another valley which nobody even knows anymore because it's all been sort of built over. You wouldn't know it is a valley. You have to have somebody kind of point it out to you. But it still does exist. The irony is I was just there. Just a couple of weeks ago, I would take my walk from the hotel to go over to the Mount of Olives. And the irony about all of this is it was right, the hotel was up near the north end of the valley of Hinnom. So when you walk on the street, you're looking down. It's a long way down. Of course, the modern city of Jerusalem is built there now. It's still a very low spot, but down there now is just, it's all grass, it's all mowed. But centuries ago, it was a perpetually smoldering dump. The Valley of Hinnom, you say that, Valley of Hinnom in Hebrew is Gehenna, the Valley of Hinnom. And that term is used to describe the final destination of all rebellious, Christ-rejecting souls, hell. There is a hell. And it's used, those terms are used to describe hell. Tophet is used synonymous with hell. It's a particular spot in the Valley of Hinnom. The Valley of Hinnom, Gehenna, is a place where much wickedness took place. That at Israel's worst, following the Canaanite gods, including Molech, down in the Valley of Hinnom, they burned their children alive as human sacrifices to Molech, invited the judgment of God upon them as a nation. Of course, all of that was many centuries ago. But it was a place of defilement, a place of refuse, a dump, and a place of perpetually smoldering fire. It was just always burning, never really quit burning. And well, God here speaks of the king of Assyria having a special place in hell. I have become a fan of the old Puritan commentator, John Trapp. He really got away with words. John Trapp on Tophet. He said, hence, the word Tophet is here used for hell, together with that eternity of extremity, which the damned there endure. And this, the Assyrians are here threatened with. Yea, their very king, whose preservation from the stroke of the angel was but a reservation to a worse mischief here and hereafter. That 185,000 Assyrian soldiers that are slaughtered by the angel of the Lord in 2 Kings 19 does not include their king. He returned to Assyria only to be murdered. Well, let me read you this. God has an eternal place, John Trapp wrote. He's got an eternal place for the Assyrian king who attacked Judah and Jerusalem. As we just read, he has made it deep and large. Its pyre is a fire with much wood. But God also had a special judgment for that king on earth. 2 Kings 19, 36 and 37 describes how, when the king of the Assyrians returned home after attacking Judah, his own sons murdered him as he worshipped in the temple of Nisroch, his god. Great men, if not good, shall be greatly tormented. And the more they have of the fat of the earth, the more they are sure to fry in hell. I think maybe it's only David and I who appreciate such frank words. But that is John Trapp. He's got a way with words. That statement, the more they have of the fat of the earth, the more they are sure to fry in hell. So anyway, this is how chapter 30 ends, with the pronouncement of judgment against the Assyrian king and against the Assyrians, the invitation from God to his people, his rebellious people, that they would just turn to him, that in returning and rest, I remind you again of those words. In returning and rest shall you be saved. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. That was the invitation to God, to Judah. It's his invitation to us personally still. In returning and rest, you should be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. And if we will come to that place, and usually it's on the other side of the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, where we'll be truly broken and repentant, the Lord will receive us. And he will then guide us. And we will be cooperative to his guidance. Can anybody here relate to that? Has anybody here eaten the bread of adversity, drank the waters of affliction, and reached what, I don't know, the secularists always talk about, you just need to reach rock bottom. But your rock bottom was finally reached, and all the rock bottom is the place where you finally quit descending. And you came to that place and you went, I am sick of this. God, please help me. And he's good to do that. And he'll work in our lives. He'll receive us, forgive us, work in our life, and guide us. And then we will hear his voice saying, this is the way, walk you in it. We can hear that. Well, we couldn't hear it before because we were too stupid, too rebellious, too unbelieving. And then again, the promise of God of another time when Israel will know all of the benefits of a restored covenant with him.
Hey, thanks for listening. We pray that the Word of God will speak to your heart as you meditate on it. If we can help you grow, or if you have any questions, you can visit us at our website at ccbangor.org. Give us a phone call at area code 207-991-9555, or you can shoot us an email at office@ccbangor.org. I'm Jessica Graves Fleming, and on behalf of my dad and Calvary Chapel Central Maine, we wish you grace and peace.